Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we've all done that by mistake. And oh, that's really cool. How'd that happen? So we're going to try to figure out how that happened. And usually that comes from practice. Yeah, still got a couple left. But anyway, I'm going to hang on a couple of seconds. I'm going to give you a preview of what we're going to paint today. So I'm going to share my screen. And I think you can all see my screen now. And I think you can all see my workboard now. And my palette. I'm actually working a two camera system now. We're going to start off, we're going to paint, well, I can't say that. This will be one of the first things we paint is this water. In fact, I am going to, hang on just a second. I'm going to put this up on my big monitor too, so I have a better idea of what you guys are looking at. There we go. Cool. Now I can see, by the way, if I go out of frame at any time, please, please, please holler at me. So this is a pretty good example of there's hard, there's soft, there's lost and found, and there's broken edges. This is basically a lost to found, found to lost. This is basically also a soft edge, but if you can see that slight variation in value, I don't technically have to have a soft edge. Technically, that is still a soft edge because the transition from the values is so slight. So I'm calling that a soft edge as opposed to a hard edge. This is a broken edge. So I have hard, soft, lost and found. And I can go back, and these are all, of course, hard edges. And that goes to, that starts to be a soft edge. And that's all due to water. So there's a couple of ways to do this. We're going to wet the background completely first, put in this nice gradation. I just picked warm to cool. And then when the paper is not soppy wet, but has a sheen on it, we're going to add these ripple marks. And we're going to make a transition from bigger to smaller as it goes off in the distance. So there is perspective in, it doesn't include just buildings or objects. It's also in nature, how the clouds recede, mountains, water, etc. Then we're going to take what we learned there and paint this little guy. So this has got softness. And this has includes all these edges, and this will be wet and wet background, and we're going to work on our blended color. And you have to overlap when you do that, and you have to do it while it's wet. So you get a nice gradation, one color to another, one value to another. And then these are a lot of broken edges, could be, etc. So these two little exercises are really kind of good. We're also going to paint clouds, which I haven't done in class yet. And I did add that to the reference in the cluster folder that I sent you the invitation to, called Edges. This is done completely wet and wet. So you can see all the soft. We're going to be doing this two different ways. Wet and wet, and wet on in half wet, half dry. I'll call it that. So you'll see what I mean by that. And then finally, we're going to take this guy, and this guy is in the reference folder, and it has what we've just got done practicing doing this. And this has got a lot of lost and found and soft and hard. And when I say soft, I mean it can be wet on dry, but it's a slight variation in value. These are all broken edges. Could put some broken edges here. Anyway, this is a painting from that visual reference. So we're going to be painting this guy, and it has a bunch of nice variations in it, from this broken edge to these hard defined edges to these soft edges, because there's a slight variation in the value to harder edges where the color gets more intense, more contrast. And then we have soft, and then we have lost. So anyway, this will include everything. So, and this is actually quite fun to paint. I think you guys will learn a lot from that. So I'm going to leave that up for a second and see if anybody else logged on. Let's see. Donna and Jerry, where are you guys? Oh, I know two of them are going to get a recording. So we will just continue. I think somebody had a last minute something. Anyway, let me show you this video first. Let me get rid of this guy. And let me show you this video first on just edges. And it makes a whole lot of sense. I've got a whole folder started on edges now. And I'm not going to show you all these, but I will include some of these links that you can look at on your own time that will expound on it. This is 20 minutes. I'm not going to do that. You know me. So here's how edges drive your paintings. And this is very interesting, and it does not, it's not a media specific. It could be any media.
I'm going to show you how to stop. Give me 30 seconds and I will show you how to take garbage off your to-do list.
Ooh.
Hi, Ian Roberts, and welcome to the Laboratory of the Painting Process. Last week, somebody sent me an email saying he was a watercolor painter, and he said, well, when I think of hard edges and soft edges, I think of this, hard edge.
We lost the sound, Joe.
I noticed when Joe muted himself that the video was muted as well. So he probably ran to go get coffee or something, I'm just guessing.
Yeah, probably so.
We're being babysitted.
This guy has fabulous, I've seen many of him, so subscribe to him. He has fabulous little videos.
Yes, he does.
He's an acrylic painter, but they're really great on composition.
Yeah, and an oil painter, I think he is. Mostly.
I wonder why the video quit playing.
Joe, are you back? 'Cause
You
we-
can have,
I'm sorry.
We don't have any sound.
You should have, is this sound, can you hear this?
have a contrast of
Now we
intensity.
can.
I mean, this is a bit,
When
Okay,
you,
let me-
um,
Let me back up. Let me back up then. I
Joe,
think
when
my-
you
I think-
muted yourself, you,
Yeah,
you
me
muted the
back up.
video.
here we go.
me a email saying he was a watercolor painter, and he said, well, when I think of hard edges and soft edges, I think of this hard edge and soft edge. And he was confused about what I was saying about hard edges in the painting. And I thought, rather than deal with that some weeks later, I should really address it now because it's a really good point. Often this is exactly what we think of in terms of hard and soft edges, right? A hard edge being just like crisp like that. That black and white is probably as big a contrast as you can create. But if you take this and just increase the value here, that's just as hard an edge, technically speaking, in one way of looking at it, but now the edge is released. It's a softer edge, right? So that whole thing of creating edges is about creating, as I mentioned last week, the quality of the contrast between two color shapes. Because you can also have the contrast of hue. These are pretty close in value, pretty close in intensity, but obviously very strong contrast. And you can have a contrast of intensity. I mean, this is a very high contrast green, a very low contrast green. And of course, the quality of those three working together are what are creating what I'm calling hard and soft edges. Hard meaning it's pulling your attention. Soft means it's releasing your attention. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples from that painting we were looking at last week, just in terms of hard and soft edges, just to clarify that definition. Because it's a good point when you think of hard and soft edges being the actual quality of the brush mark, as opposed to the quality of the contrast between the two shapes. So I mentioned there were three major qualities that could control an edge, and that's hue, value, and intensity. Temperature is sort of a practical one that we use, you know, when we're painting, obviously, but you can find any color with those three scientifically. So let's just look at two or three places for exactly this. Let's look right there where we have, we could say, a very dull purple and a very dull green. And they're the same intensity and they're the same value. So they hardly have any hold whatsoever. So the next one we could go to is right here, where we have a very strong intensity shift with that pink, not a very strong value shift, not that strong hue shift in the sense that yellow is close to it on the color wheel, but certainly it holds attention. And then the third one is, let's look here. We have a very strong value shift, dark to light. We have a hue shift from green to, we don't even know what color that is, really dark purple maybe. And a intensity shift in the sense that we know that's green, and this is now such a dull color, we can't tell what color it is. So it's very low intensity. So let's look at this one here, where we have the same value shift as up here, pretty much. This might be a little lighter. We have the same hue shift from green to this neutral dark. But in this one, we have a very strong intensity shift, and that this is a much more intense green than this one. Because we have contrast of hue, value, and intensity all together right here, we are creating the strongest grip visually, the hardest edge, which is bringing us in to where we had intended to in the original structure of the painting. So I hope that clarified that point about hard and soft edges. And now I want to look at the painting by Titian. One of the things that I really like about it is that it has a dense, like a lot of.
We are not going to look at the painting by Titian because the crux of this whole, can you hear me? The
Yes.
crux of this whole video is this part right here. But as usual, I will send you the link to this. And then you can watch the rest of it. And here's a little sample of this. And it doesn't necessarily relate to what we're doing today. This relates much better when I see this painting, and we've all been here. So the first place that I look, and everything is driving you toward this spot, these trees, this horizontal, this is really a crucifix or it's really a crucifix composition design. And the contrast between the intensity of this hue and the difference in the values and the edges are hard edges. They're not blended out. That's the first thing that my brain is going to go to. Plus he's got some more intense color here, and the rest of it is all kind of neutralized a little bit, even back here. That's not the first place that I look. My brain tells me to look right here, and then I'll start wandering around. So does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good little explanation of edges. As I said, there are 4, so it's not hard or soft. It's hard and soft, and there's different ways because value plays a role in that. And then there's lost and found. I'm going to negative paint something around something as opposed to paint something. And I can show you some examples of that later. And I will also send you a link to another friend of mine, Rick Sowitz, on 4 types of edges. It's very basic, but it's worth being refreshed about. I want to go over the handout first, as I usually do. I'll start here. I could not find the reference photo for this, so we're painting the waterfall instead, but you can make that waterfall as well as this, any palette that you want. And I could make it any time of day, and I could make it any season. So here I'm looking, and I see the hardest edges are right here. And so that's what my brain is going to gravitate toward first. Here's a bunch of lost edges, and they're lost because of the transition. You could say they're soft. Yes, they're soft and lost. And we're going to be actually painting one more thing that I just added to reference is a little sky thing, because I want to show you another way to paint edges, because it's really part of water, atmosphere, sky. And also edges are architecturally the sides of those stucco buildings you see in Europe. By the way, my kids, my daughter and my grandkids and son-in-law are as we speak, they're staying in a villa in Lake Como, and they just went by George Clooney's house. So they sent a pic about an hour ago. So they're on the kids are 12 and they're on their second honeymoon. So good for them, especially in these travel days. Anyway, there's the reference for that. Here's the reference for these guys. You can try this later on. We're not really going to try this today, but there's a variety of edges, and you'll see what I mean by this when we paint this. We're going to paint something simpler as far as that sky. Here's also a variety of edges in this water, and especially here. So here's a couple of things that you could practice on. We're going to paint this just for the experience of this and part of the sky, wet and wet. I also included this, which we're not going to paint because of limited time, but it's very interesting. Nita Engel is the one that taught me how to paint transparent watercolor. She and I were both already illustrators, commercial artists. But what she did, as opposed to Zoltan Szabo and Frank, kind of Frank Webb, but mostly Zoltan, is this background, just because we're painting in watercolor, this does not have to be soft or wet and wet. If you'll notice here, that is just that value change that we just saw in that video. This is a hard edge, but that could be just a slight value change, and that's what I need for my soft edge. Even though technically it's not blurry, it is still a soft edge because my brain's telling me that. This was an exercise that I put in there for soft, hard, lost and found, and I'll show you a little example of that I actually did on copy paper, so it works. In fact, I think I have it sitting over there someplace. Let me show you some examples of people that I admire and why, because they take full advantage of their edges. This is, it's my big three at the moment. It's Andy, Joey, and Alvaro. I don't know if I have any Alvaro here, but here's an excellent example of a lost edge. And this is Joey, Joseph Sabukovich. He doesn't like it when I call him Joey. Anyway, look what happened back here. I don't know whether that was intentional. I think it kind of was a nice surprise, but look what happened back here. I can still tell that's an awning. I can still tell that blends right in to the shadow. Beautiful colors to go along with that. And that sets up why I wanted to paint this, because of the figures walking in this wet pavement. This is another version from Andy, and this is a nice example for us, especially in SoCal. So here's something that is different from a Nita Engel painting. I think if you have that book, you'll notice something similar to this. These are soft or lost edges down here. If these were hard edges, which they could have very well been, in fact, I think that's the way most people would have painted them. I think it would take away from this. This is the star of my show up here, this interesting rock formation. And then I have a bunch of lost or soft edges in the ocean, and a bunch of found to note the wave. And then I've got very slight transitions in values. But this really sets this up nicely. Everything is sweeping up. Everything is going right over to that hole. This diagonal is coming down right to that hole. So, and this is a nice balance over here, I think. A lot of people, I don't know whether that actually existed, but I would have added that to balance this over here. Otherwise, this is a big nothing space. It's just enough to connect. So that's my comment on that. And here's a few more examples. Whoops, didn't want that. I wanted this. Here's a few more examples real quick. So we're going to be painting something like this. We're going to be painting water. And if you'll notice that some of these edges that you can barely see now were done while the paper was damp. And then some of these edges were put in after the paper was dry. And this transition right here, which is pretty mild, close in value, that is technically a hard edge, but it appears as a soft edge because here are my harder edges with more contrast. The same thing would apply to this. And I want these cars and the street to be sharp, to have defined edges. And I really do love all this. Just let it run down, let it flow. And look at even the grills, no detail, no defined, nothing defined. It's a little bit, but anyway, that's very important. And these are lost back here. This is a slight transition in my value. These are lost, blending right into defined shapes. And of course, value has a great deal to play with that. This is one of my favorite paintings because it's not easy to do. So see these edges right here? That was done while the paper was damp. And this was done after the fact, these shapes right here. And you'll notice that these are all shapes. They're just shapes. And it's a combination of those shapes that give the illusion of this boat moving in this ripply water. The same thing, come on. The same thing here. Beautiful contrast between warm and cool, and you can see the differences. You can see the difference. Some of these strokes were put in while the paper was a little wetter. These were put in when the paper was just damp. And then I have the contrast or lack of contrast in the values. I showed you that one. I showed you that one. I showed you that one. One more. And this even is more pronounced. This really gets soft and lost down here. And then as we come up into the painting, this draws us up into the painting to this area right here. And even the contrast here is lost, getting lost because of the subtle shift in values. So it attracts me to these highest contrast area right here. But it's really interesting how this just draws me up in the painting, and I could come at it down from these masts, and I could certainly follow the dock. Anyway, I thought those were some pretty good examples. If you want me to, say yes. If you want me to put some of those in the reference folder, I will, just so you can use them as reference.
Yes.
Because we talked
yes,
about them. Okay. I'll do that, and I'll make a note to myself, Edge Art to reference. Okay, I think that's enough. So I'm going to bring this up. And by the way, I will show you these, and I'll also bring my camera up. And by the way, again, if I get out of frame, please, please, please let me know. I'm going to squeeze you guys down so it's not in the video. And this is going to be where my palette is. And the next workshop we do, I'm finding a way to, this is so you can see my palette better. And this is where I'll be working. In fact, I'm going to take this off. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working on last. I want to make sure we have time for that. And I can put this away. And I want to see if I can find something very quickly to show you. Yes. This is an example of edges that I printed out and I made up. This is just a thick copy paper. And so that was, I tried to wet this and it did okay. Anyway, so this was just wet and wet. I wet the whole thing and then painted the leaves in. This is hard, soft hard. I painted this wet on dry. This is lost and found, lost, found. Lost, found. So that's the way I'm defining my edges. And that's a great way to paint. And this is broken, even though this is not cold press, I was still able to, using the side of my brush, I'm just going to pick my brush up and I'm going to drag it. I'm not going to do this because that's going to give me this. I want to just brush the top of the paper. Even though this is smooth paper, I still got some pretty interesting effects. So 4 different kinds of lines, you can do that. That is in the reference folder, that template, or you can just do it on a scrap piece of paper. It doesn't make any difference. So anyway, here's my pad, and I am going to take this off. In fact, you know what I'm gonna try to do is something, I'm gonna raise that a little bit more so I can actually get, I'll raise this even a little bit more. So I can actually get pretty much the whole pad in there. So let me take this off, and if you guys want to tape yours off, I'm going to do, we're going to paint small because we'll get the same results. We'll learn the same things, and we don't have to take the time to cover a bigger area with paint. And I am using, as usual, a 140-pound cold press. And I'm just going to split that in half. And I certainly will be using Mr. Gravity. Or excuse me. I used the wrong pronoun, I guess. I'm going to be using Gravity. That looks about right. So I will zero in on this part. And here's my Gravity machine. So I'm going to be putting that on the top. And I'm going to be using this for reference. Let me put that, oh, I already put it up for you. I'm going to warm up my coffee, and then we'll put on our first wash, which is going to be wet and wet. You know, you guys, I just thought of this too. Watercolor is a BS in my view. I did a whole workshop on this. It's not unforgiving. You can go back and change stuff. So you can go back and you can especially change your values, and you can change your intensity, and you can change your edges after the fact. So if you're trying to save a painting per se, hey, I'm trying to save a painting. If I just hadn't done this, or it didn't do that, or I touched it, or I got this happening, you can do this quite easily with watercolor. So this is also another way, maybe you can go back and revisit some of your paintings, old paintings, and try a couple of things. This is from the waterfall, so I'm going to get rid of that. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to wet this. Clean water. I'm just going to wet the top part of this. You can wet it with a sponge. You can wet it with a brush. You can, however you're comfortable with wetting to make this wet and wet. That's good enough. And I'm going to mix up kind of a salmony warm kind of color. I'm going to use some raw sienna and some red. I just want something that's kind of warm at the top. Instead of just white paper. I'm going to let that drift. And then I'm going to mix up some blue. I'm going to use a cerulean. Just for a light cool tone. And when I do this, I'm going to go halfway. You see how I went over that? I didn't go up to the edge. I went over that edge where that color was drifting. And I think I'll even make it just slightly darker down here, just for fun. This is actually good practice for just putting on a gradated wash. And then I'm going to leave it alone. And then we have to wait a couple minutes. So at least I've got some tone on the paper that I can work with. And as this starts to dry, and because of gravity, it's going to dry from the top down. So it's going to dry at the top faster. I'm still going to use my 1 inch, which seems for a lot of people, this is a huge brush for this. I could even use this brush if I wanted to, which is 1.5 inches. But I can make it this big and I can make it that small. So there you go. And again, this will take a little practice. Doesn't have to be a lot, but a little. This is still wet down here, so I'm going to give it a couple minutes.
Joe,
Yes.
who was the Andy you referred to?
I'm sorry, say again.
Who was the Andy, the artist you referred to? Andy who?
Evenson.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, he's killing it right now. I've talked to him several times. I'm chiding him in person and on video to do a video of just nothing but skies. I wish he would. He said it's coming. He gave me a thumbs up. Okay, maybe that will have settled, so I'm going to test it. So I'm going to mix up a little stronger color. I'm going to use ultramarine, a little darker blue, And I'm going to use some of that salmon color that I just got done putting at the top there to neutralize that a little bit. And I'm just going to make a little swipe here. I want to do that at the bottom. That still looks pretty wet to me. So I'm going to neutralize this up a little bit more. And I'm touching my brush to my towel because I want dry paint. And I can still see that this is matte up here. This has a sheen on the paper right here. And this is still kind of glossy, but I'm going to make a mark. And I'm going to do this confidently, and I'm not going to do this. I'm going to just make a mark. I'm going to make another mark. Could be a little bit, it's still a little bit too wet. I'm going to make another mark, but it's going to be drier as I get to the top. So let's just see what happens. There's kind of what I'm after. I want this edge to be soft, but I want it to be defined, if that makes sense. And they're going to get smaller as they go off into the distance. Those edges. I'm going to mix up, but while that's cooking, I'm going to mix up a little darker version of that. And I'm not adding water to my paint. I want that to be kind of dry. I'm going to give this a couple more minutes, but it's still holding an edge. I just want it to be, as it gets toward you, I want it to be a little darker. And it's still really kind of glossy right here. It's still kind of glossy at the bottom. So I'm going to work up from the top. There we go. I don't want to go back and try to fix stuff. I want this to be, I'm very limited. In fact, when I even put that wash on at the very beginning, I limited myself to a very few strokes. And you can see how that's lightening up and disappearing. So I'm kind of getting that watery, ripply effect. It's not just blowing up on me. I can still see defined edges. I'm not putting water on my brush. I'm just keep mixing this new color with paint right out of the well.
Which colors were you using, Joe?
I'm using I only have on this palette. I only have red. It's like a cad red, raw sienna, lemon yellow. I've got alizarin, burnt sienna, burnt umber, black, 2 greens, which I won't use, but they came with the set, and I'll tell you about that in a second. This might be okay to do this now. Yes. I wanted a little darker as I came toward me. So I kind of tested it down there in the corner. When you put this paint on, don't test it up here. Don't test it. Test it on a corner of the paper that you see. And this is all going to disappear, but I'm still holding my edge. I still see these ripple shapes. And look how much this has changed when I first put that color on. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do for this. Look how that's lightened up considerably. But I'm still holding my edges. Beautiful. This is what is absolutely beautiful about watercolor. Really cool. So I'm going to let that set up. And because it's drying from top down, I'm going to mix up some dark. I'm going to use my black. That's actually what it's called. By the way, what I'm referring to, I don't know if you guys knew this, but if you want to get anybody sucked into watercolor, there's a whole set of 12 watercolors, and they're big tubes. They're 12 milliliter tubes. And this is the set that I'm using right now. I'm testing this out for the college kids that I'm teaching because this whole set, 12 tubes of watercolor paint, is $16. You could spend $16, as you guys well know, on just one tube of paint. So I see that I'm going to try to make a broken stroke. So I'm using the side of my brush. There's my broken stroke. How about that? And the paper is still a little wobbly because of the moisture. And now all I'm going to do is use my dagger brush. And you can kind of see how fast this comes together. We're not done yet, but so this part up here is already dry. This whole thing is almost all dry. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make a slight value change. I'm going to go right over the top of this. And that is basically, technically, that is a hard edge. But because of the value difference, it is a soft edge. Look how well that marries together. I can even, if when this is a little bit drier, maybe I'll try it right now. I can even come down into here. Yes, that'll work. Look how well that marries those two together, that transition. It's pretty cool. This is an awfully good practice. And you can make, if you're doing a painting, you could make that shoreline be whatever you wanted it to be. How's everybody doing? Fun?
Yes, fun.
Good.
And once this is drier up here, I'll show you one more little thing that you can do. Whoops, I spit on it. Oh no. It's ruined. Make sure you try this close in value stroke. That's wet on dry to marry these two together. Right in here. It's almost like that little boat thing that I showed you, that Chinese fisherman that Andy painted. Beautiful way to paint this. Joey Z did a nice series of paintings in China also. I spit right there, and I'm just gonna I'm not gonna touch it. I'm not gonna try to fix it.
How big was your dagger, Joe?
What?
How big was your dagger?
Oh, my spit, my drop.
No, your dagger brush. How big was it?
Oh, how big was my dagger brush? Here it is. It is a rosemary brush, which I highly recommend. This is 1.5 inches. I have several of these, but I use this one the most. And this is a 1/4 inch, and this is a 1/2 inch. And I have one that's like 1.5 inches, which I had to have and paid money for. And I've never used it
Oh,
because I don't paint big enough on these demos. But they make a beautiful product. Here's my 1 inch dagger. Ray Andrews actually paints with a dagger brush. She does landscapes, very colorful landscapes. She actually paints with a dagger brush quite a bit. Boy, is my family going to be sorry after I'm gone, because I've got probably thousands of dollars in art supplies that gets used very little or not at all. To be fair, though, some of those were given to me. Remember the brush guy? Anybody heard of the brush guy or the brush woman?
Yes.
Yeah, he used to come to Otis.
Yeah, they used to be, when it was in-person stuff, they used to come around. It was a feeding frenzy. Okay, I think this is dry enough. I have a whole bunch of Prismacolor pencils. I could be using white. I could be using white paint with color mixed in to make it gouache. But for this case, I see some little specklies that I missed up here. So I'm just going to put those in using this colored pencil. And maybe I want to break that up. Maybe I want to put a couple over here. They're subtle, but they're effective. They make a nice little finish off of this. Oh, that's actually a nice color. Look at that color. I haven't noticed that. So I'm going to add a little bit of that, I think. Cool. Wow, that's getting better and better. And you can really kind of control these guys. A little highlight here. Blend it out. Wow, it's kind of cool. So anyway, that's kind of a good warm up, I think. And I really don't have to draw this next guy. In fact, I want to try something. I want to try something in my little book. You guys are familiar with that. So let me see how I'm going to do this. I'm going to try it this way. I'm just going to mix up I'm going to make a purple. Could be.
So I
any
have a
color.
question.
Yes.
I tried to follow you. I guess that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? Is trying to follow you.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I tried to follow you and what I got is like nothing. And I want to know if I can show it to you and then maybe you can tell me if I should start all over or what.
Sure.
What I
Sure.
did.
Let me stop the share and let me spotlight you. Yeah, if anybody has this issue. Okay, you're on the right track. You did the blend from the top. I mean, you did that initial wash from warm to cool, and you did wait. And the initial strokes at the bottom that you did look pretty good, actually. I still see you might have waited a little too long. I see a little more definition, and this is going to depend on the paper that you're using. I think all you need to do with that one is to use that light variation in the value, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And fill in the middle here, connect the top to the bottom. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I took, let me get rid of this and go back to here. See these strokes that, see these strokes? See this stroke?
Uh-huh.
That is not very contrasting. They're very close in value, right? But they still have a hard edge. So that was wet on dry. I think you could constantly. I'm trying to bridge these two together because this was actually dry on dry up here, and this was wet on wet down here. I think this just takes practice. And how wet is the paper? What's the humidity that day? That's the reason it's frustrating at sometimes. I think there could be more in the middle, and I think you could do that by using a color like this, which is not dark and it's not light. It's a bridge kind of value, but it's very close to the background. I think you could just keep painting and make some strokes, watery strokes that look like that. Does
Okay,
that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
yeah,
It looks like there's this and then there's this. We want to marry those two
okay,
because that looks to me believable. This looks believable to me. I mean, it could actually happen, I guess. So yes, you're just not finished yet.
okay.
So let me show you something real quick, and I'm going to just do this on this guy. So I'm just going to make a puddle of paint here, and I'm going to use I'll make kind of a purple, but I want to just do this. And I want to make sure that's enough paint on there. So
Can you move your pad up a little bit?
sure. Thank you for reminding me.
Perfect,
So
thank you.
there's two ways that you can do this. I'm going to split it. I'm cleaning my brush and I'm blotting it off. And I'm actually coming at it from this side. So I'm not pulling it out, I'm pushing in. And where that's going to blend, if it didn't dry already. Dried a little bit, but that's going to be my soft edge. See, that's a soft edge. I just made that edge softer. That's going to go away. If I wanted to do the opposite, I'm going to pull out of this. My paint dried a little bit fast, but you'll get the idea. See, now I've got a gradation. So I'm pulling paint. I'm pulling paint out of that edge to get a gradation. My initial paint dried a little bit too fast, but you can see how I softened that edge. I went from outside, and I went to that paint. And that's how I just softened the edge, because nothing's happening over here. Here, I'm actually taking paint from my initial strokes, and I'm pulling it out. And you'll notice a lot of people, when they paint like a gradated wash, they can put down a color. So I'll put down a color, and I'm painting a particular thing. I'm painting something in particular like this. I don't care if it's a leaf or whatever. And now I'm starting to pull paint out of there. So I'm pulling paint. And that's how I can do those lost and found. So I can start by defining this edge. And now I can pull paint. So that's going from found to lost, or lost to found, however you want to say it. So you can see that gradation.
Do
So
you
here,
get blossoms by doing that?
I'm sorry?
Do you get blossoms by doing that?
No, because I'm not putting anything wetter over the top of something that's drier. I'm trying to use the same, I do this right away. I did that right away. If I go back into this now and I put something wetter on top, I probably will get a blossom because it's trying to seek a drier area. That water that's wetter than what was on, than what I painted it on. So that's probably going to give me a blossomy edge if that's not too dry already.
Thank you.
This it's really getting kind of warm up here. I think I think you guys get the idea of what I'm trying to say. So here I'm just pulling paint. I'm putting down a mark there, and I'm just pulling paint out of it. I'm pulling paint out of it. And here is where I just started here with clean water, and I'm just touching that edge because all I want is a soft edge. I don't want it to go anyplace else. I just wanted to soften that edge, much like that. And I can go back after it's dry and still do the same thing. So I'm going to set this aside and see if it actually blossoms. It might. Yeah, it's going to be a little blossom right there. But you see how easily I just pulled paint. If you were doing a statue with a lot of form to it, or any object that's lit, then you could use that technique pretty easily.
Joe, this is Mallory, are you drying off your brush when you're pulling it? You dry it, then go pull it?
I'm just, yes, I've got some water on it to make it work. But here, I'm going to put down some paint. I'm just going to put down some paint right here. See if I can do it. I'll do it over here. So I'm just going to put down some paint and say I'm painting a ball. I'll try this. And now I'm going to clean my brush. And now I've got a damp, clean brush. And now I'm pulling paint out of that to complete my my ball. There's my ball. There's my form. And then I can go back and I can clean it up a little bit, but that's an easy way to give form to things. If I'm just wanting to soften an edge, I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to go from the outside and just touch that edge. So now I've got a soft edge, and now I've got a hard edge, but I don't have a gradation. So that's a big deal. It depends on what you're painting. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I am going to get somewhat of a bloom around here. It's pushing the paint away. And I'm going to get a nice little edge because those colors are going to separate. That's going to be a blue edge on there. You know, you can try all these things on just a piece of scrap paper. Be kind of cool. Steve, I think you just had to marry those two a little bit more. That's all.
Joe,
went
the
up-
demonstration.
I'm sorry.
The demonstration you just gave, I thought would work really well in still lifes with fruit. with
Absolutely.
shadow,
Absolutely.
grapes,
This,
oranges, pears,
yes, absolutely. And the shadows.
the
This will
shadows,
work with,
right?
this will work with any, it's just part of painting with watercolor. It'll work with any subject. And Steve, I just think you just had to marry these two a little bit more, bring this down a little bit more. I lightened up on that, but the paper was dry. I didn't need the wet paper anymore. This is where I needed the wet paper because I needed the soft edges because of the contrast.
Joe, sorry to interrupt. Are you recording again?
I've been recording the whole time.
Okay.
I haven't stopped recording yet. Just to make sure. Yes, I'm still recording.
Thanks.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'm going to paint this way. I'm going to turn this vertically and we'll paint this guy. So I'll bring this guy up. And this is a good little practice one because it's pretty simple. You can make this into anything that you want to make it into. You can make it sunset, you could make it fog, you could make it winter, you could make it spring, you could put leaves on those trees, bushes, you could do anything you wanted. But this is just about painting this part down here, this part up here. I'm going to paint the whole thing wet. But I am not going to wet the page first. I'm going to let that bead of water let gravity go down, and I'm going to overlap my strokes. Okay. So I need Mr. Gravity for sure. I think you can all see that. So I'm going to get some clean water. You might want to get some clean water after using that black. Steve, you've got lots of material where you are already. People's Wharf and all that stuff. Olympic Peninsula.
Oh, yeah. I have no excuses.
Anyway, I'm going to mix up some cerulean right over that purple that I had. Why not? And I want to make sure that I have enough water, enough of a puddle that I want this to stay wet. Seems like things are drying faster up here today. So I'm just going to start from the top and go down. And I want enough water on here to form a bead right here. So that's going to drift down. And I'm going to change my color. I'm going to start adding some pink. And I'm still, this is still going to be wet. So what I'm going to do is, because I have this bead of water of paint forming here, I'm not going to come up to it. I'm going to overlap it. I'm going to overlap that color. And then I'm going to start going down. See how nicely that blended? And now I'm going to start warming this up. I'm going to overlap it. See if I can't get some yellow here. I'm going to overlap and then go down. I wanted that to be a little more orange, so I'm going to overlap and let it drift. And that's forming a bead down here. And then I'm going to use a little more yellow. And so that's all going to blend. You can see how that's blending down. And now I'm going to go do kind of just the opposite. I'm going to go right through here and I'm going to start, I overlap that. And I want this kind of a pinky orangey kind of color down here, overlap. And so I can live with that. I'm getting this blend going down. And this is going to look awfully dark. But while this is kind of still wet, I'm going to put some kind of a cloud shape. And you notice that I only used 1, 2, 3, 4 strokes. And I'm going to let that just drift. And that's going to get much, 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 much lighter. But I've got that glow going through here, and that's what I wanted. So that's a really good way to change colors, and they don't all have to go from light to dark. They can have different values, but I'm changing colors because I'm using gravity and I'm overlapping. I'm overlapping. And I'm letting it alone. I'm letting it paint itself. So whoever asked me this question before about blooms, I'm going to mix up a little bit of that blue color again. And I see this is still wet. So I'm just going to make, this is not as wet. I'm just going to make a little mark right here. And I'm going to watch that, see what happens to that, if that blooms or not. This is a very simple thing to paint, and you can learn so much by just doing this and watching it. And gravity is going to help me here, change this edge, rough this edge up. But this is going to be pushed way back. When I painted this, this was just as dark when I initially painted it. Watercolor is so fun. You guys who have been in recent workshops know my latest obsession, correct? It's AI, artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Anyway, I want to show you guys something. I'm going to, can you see the screen? Can you see everybody?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. I'm going to spotlight me, start video, and add spotlight. Okay. I don't think I can do that with, while I'm sharing. So let me do it this way. So this is my first Canvas print. I want a pen. No, yes. Who did I add? Replace spotlight. Come on. Pen. Okay, there. Everybody can see me big.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So here's my first collaboration with machines, with artificial intelligence, and I really like it a lot. Whoops, I'll hold it back a little bit. And that image was painted using words and artificial intelligence. And it is an old growth forest with glowing lights, twilight, and my influences was Klimt, Mucha, and Yoshida. And then I went back and I digitally painted on it. So Siberi. And so now I have this image. And,
Okay, so what software did you use and how did you print it? And what service did you use for printing?
Yeah, I use Disco Diffusion for my software. It's a Google Colab. So if you type in Disco Diffusion, you can get the prompt, and there is a great tutorial that I can send you. I can send you a link to both if you guys are interested. I've got hundreds of images now.
That'd be cool. Thank you.
And how did you print it out?
Canvas on demand. That image that you saw right there, that's a fairly large painting. That's 36 by 24, was $75.
And
You could sell that for easily sell that for 300.
And what size of resolution was the image that you sent them?
It's 300 DPI to size, but there are also, and I can include this. Let me write a note. I can include this plus upscale. Before in the old days, you could. I don't want that. In the old days, you could not upscale anything. If you had something that came in that you were working on, for me especially logos or whatever, it would only make it 300 DPI from like 72 DPI. It would just make it, it would be blurry. It would still be blurry. It wouldn't upscale it. But what AI does now is it will take the difference between the 2 pixels and it will imagine that however many steps between those 2 individual pixels and compute that. So it will sharpen it considerably.
And
so
what program do you use to upscale, or website?
If you just put in upscale images, Google that, you'll get several different. I'll try to include a link that I used because
Yeah,
they want you to buy a subscription. So I think you get one free, but then they want you to buy a subscription to it. Anyway, it's a great way to extend your creativity just with, oh, wow, that's cool. And each prompt that you give, depending on how many batches you run, which means an image, you could do 1, 10, 50, 100. It will all be different based on that one prompt. They will all be different because the way it works is it's got a generator and a discriminator. So it's going to take all this mountains. I've got, 10,000 mountains. So now I'm going to discriminate because there's also the word woods, water, glowing, lanterns in there. So it's going to discriminate, and that's what it's going to build its image off of.
And
So
probably,
it's fascinating, and it's the future. I'm going to try to start teaching that at Cal Lutheran.
and you have a pretty powerful computer, I suspect, and a desktop, not a laptop.
It's not running on your computer. It's running on Google's servers.
Oh, wow.
I can sit here. I can run stuff all day long, all night. And it's going to be, if you just put in Marsh, Sunset Marsh, you would get as many as you wanted out of that. So anyway, I thought I'd share that because
No, I appreciate it. I'm going to have to check it out this time.
Yeah, that's going to be kind of the future. Whoops. I think. Anyway, let me get this guy back over here, and let's see. Okay. And you know what? I was yakking about that, and I screwed up. I want this bottom to stay. In fact, this is good. My bottom is dried out. It's not shiny anymore. So I'm going to take my mister and I'm going to re-wet the bottom. I'm just going to go right across here. And so I just re-wet the bottom without touching the brush. And it's pretty good, actually. So I'm going to take some blue, and I'm going to make I'm going to keep my paint fairly thick. I keep dabbing my brush on my towel, adding a little more paint. So I'm going to add some paint right through there and see what happens. That's not too bad. I'm going to add a little bit more through there. I'm going to add something up here and a couple little strokes here. And that's going to be a nice little difference between that warm color underneath and my blue. That's kind of cool. And I'm going to get thinner as I go back into the distance. I think that'll work. So I'm glad I did that. Now I showed you how to re-wet it. So that's going to be okay. That didn't blow up on me. It's going to have a definite shape to it. In fact, I just lightened this color slightly, and I'm going to, again, dry my brush, put color on it, dry my brush, put color on it. So now I can go back and get very light with that. And that's going to work pretty good, I think. I'm going to take that blue and make it slightly darker. I'm going to add a little ultramarine to it. Again, I'm dipping my brush on my towel. And I just want a couple little places where it's going to be darker. I see, I'm going to make this a little darker down here. And maybe a little darker right through there. A little darker right through there. So that's going to give me that step going back. And so I'm all set up. I'm all set up to paint this other guy. So I'm going to use my, oh my God, black. And I'm going to add a little alizarin to it to make it a little burgundy-ish. And I'm just going to make a mark right through there. I'm not going to try to paint little bushes. I'm not going to try to do anything yet. I'm just going to say, okay, let's see. Let me do something first that I forgot to do before. I'm going to clean my brush thoroughly. I'm going to get a paper towel. And I'm going to say, okay, where's that light source? And I'm going to blot. There's my light source. Not too bad. There's my light source. And here it is coming down. There we go. There's my light source. Now I can take that dark color. And now I'm just going to go right through here in one fell swoop. And now I can go back and I can tickle these edges. And I'm going to leave a little line there. I'm going to take a little watered down version of that guy. And I'm going to go right through here. And that's going to start my reflections. I see I got a little bump right there. Let that drift. Let that drift. I'm going to make a couple of little darker. I'm just adding a little bit of dark paint. So I'm setting myself up. I think I'm setting myself up fairly well to let that bleed drift, whatever, before I put trees in. I'm already getting kind of the effect that I want. And I'm also setting myself up for the bottom of this by using that very slight variation in value and wet on dry. So now I'm going to use my rigger because I think this is dry enough. You can come in. I'm doing a Zoom. You watch me demo.
Okay. Hi.
So I'm again, I'm trying to use more paint than water. So here's a tree coming up right through there, and I see that I have a tree coming up. I don't want to be too heavy-handed with this. A few little things sticking up. Maybe some weeds sticking up over here. So all of a sudden, I made it a marsh. I can put a few little leaves on these, on this tree. And I can also go back while this is still damp. I can use my palette knife. And I can put a few little weeds in there. That's kind of cool. And now I can go back. And Steve, this would be the stroke. I'm just going to mix a little bit of that blue, and I'm going to go right through here and add a little dry to that. I think that works pretty good. And I think I'm going to darken it up slightly. Yeah, it's fun. We just painted this one. We're painting edges, which is a lot to do with water. So
Very cool.
we
It's
just
fun to watch.
painted that one this morning, or so far.
How many people are?
We're going to end up painting this.
Oh,
Oh, cool.
So anyway, so I think you guys kind of get that. So take a card. There's on top of the printer. There you go.
Thank you.
Take a couple. Anyway, so I'm going to just use that darker brown now. This is kind of marrying those two together. Now that I see that I have some foliage coming down, I can add a few little things. And what I want to do is I want to add a little more blue, and I'm going to mix that brown color with my blue color. And I'm just going to add a few little dark I just want to give the illusion of reality someplace, but I really like the bounce between the blue and the orange kind of effect. And I probably will. I'm gonna lighten this tree. So this is kind of a little positive, negative. Let me see what happens. Yeah. So that tree is going to go back up into there. And pretty soon, if I was sitting on a rock over here, I could have a little painting done. So that's just a little study. For reference, you could make that into anything you wanted to, but my goal was to keep this blended and keep this broken up. So I think you guys can kind of get an idea of what I was trying to do there. So we have two studies done, 2 paintings done. I'm going to show you a quick little one on clouds. So this, of course, it adapts to water. I think you can get how it would adapt to still lives and stucco or sides of buildings or anything in texture. You could use a lot of broken edges. Anyway, I could put this any mood that I wanted and any place that I wanted. You see how much this dried back? So I kind of like at least having something happen up there. And of course, the blue is coming from, this reflected blue is coming from the sky. So 5 minutes, we'll do a couple of different ways to use these edges for clouds. And then we'll paint the waterfall. Anybody have any questions? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna set up for this cloud thing. And so here's the one that I'm actually going to use. And I'm looking again for shapes. And this is just a couple of, it's just a quick thing on a couple of different ways to paint these. So I'm looking for shapes. So that's the reason I did this one on the bottom. I'm just looking for shapes.
Are we gonna do two?
Yes,
Okay.
because I want to do two different ways to do it.
Okay.
And they don't have to be big, you know, we're just doing this for an exercise so you guys can practice. I just want to make sure that you get it as opposed to, I just want to make sure that you get the process. I don't care if it turns out. In fact, I would rather it didn't. I would rather you push it too far. So there, that's a built-in excuse. And I'm going to use the gravity machine again for the first one. And I'm not going to draw this. I don't draw clouds because then I follow a line and I don't let the watercolor happen. And I do not draw shadows. Just let them happen. So this is what I'm trying to get to. I'm squinting at the top. The color one, and I can see the shapes. These are pretty defined shapes. I can see the dark, the light. I can see those white clouds. I can see the gray. So that's the key to painting, in my view, is being able to recognize shapes. Oops, I'm gonna get some clean water. Yeah. Be a good idea. So the first one I'm going to do is going to be wet and wet. How we would think of, well, yeah, let's do wet and wet, and let's take advantage of this timing that we've already been learning. So I'm just going to use my big brush. Yay. It's gonna wet the whole thing. And I'm gonna give it a couple minutes to settle. How's this for a nice clean paint cloth? So that's starting to settle. So why don't I mix up some blue? I'm just going to use cerulean because I don't want to spend too much time doing this. And let's see, I know that that's going to be wet. So I see a shape over here. I see kind of a shape coming up and then something happening. And this kind of big shape coming through here. And I see a shape coming up from the bottom. Something happening here and here. And the rest of it, I can just fill in with blue. Yep, why not? Hey, it all looks like a sky, doesn't it? And while that is wet, I'm going to take that blue and I'm going to mix a little of my burnt umber with it to make a neutral out of it. Or your brown ultramarine, burnt sienna. Ultramarine makes a good neutral. I just want some kind of a gray kind of color. And I'm going to start painting up here while it's still wet. I'm not going to use the blue. I'm going to use this, my this kind of gray color. I'll let that blend edge. And I see I have a little shadow on this side. And I'm looking at the shapes, and I have some shapes coming down into there. And on the bottom of this, and I have some stronger shapes coming down here. Little edge happening. I'm going to use the side of my brush to lace this up a little bit. I'm going to go back and add a little ultramarine to that while that's still wet. Just give it another layer of value. Not using very many brush strokes, am I? This is just almost like painting the water. While that's still damp, I'm going to see if I can't define a couple of these edges. So that has a nice soft feel to it, I think. And you can actually go back, as you guys know with this. I'm just going to take a Kleenex, and yes, I can blot some edges, which add a little bit more realism to it. I'll blot just a little bit just to show you. I'm painting with this now. This is the same as my brush. I'm just painting with this. Kind of cool. Not bad. Kind of looks fluffy. So all this requires is practice. That's all it requires, is just to paint some of this stuff as practice. So there's no pressure, right? It's just practice. I'm going to paint exactly the same thing, try to paint exactly the same thing, the same way, only I'm not going to wet the paper completely. In fact, I'm going to dry this. And the reason I wanted to dry it is because I want you to cover up the top of this so I don't get any water on it. So this time, last time I wet the whole thing, it was just wet and wet. And so this is what happened, and it's all soft edges. Great. I went back and I painted 3 different layers. I used the blue first, and then the gray second, the neutral. And then I went back and I added a little darker value of that, somewhere between both, and cooled it a little bit just for a bridge. And then I blotted it with a Kleenex, and I cleaned up a few edges. As timing is everything. Watercolor and comedy. So this time I am going to, and I hope you can see this, I'm going to sprinkle. See that?
Can't see it.
Can you see it on my board?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, see, I'm going to just sprinkle, and I'm going to make it half wet and half dry. And paint the same thing, and we'll see what happens. I'm using a spray bottle to sprinkle this. You could use your brush and hit the end of your finger just like you're spattering. So now I'm going to try to paint the same thing. Whoops, throwing my brushes. So I'm going to start off with the blue again, and I'm going to try to figure out these shapes. So that's all going to be blue up there. And then I've got this coming down and I've got this coming over. And this guy at the bottom here. And so do you see what's happening to this? You see what's happening to the edges where it's hitting the place where it's wet, and then hitting the dry on the paper. So you're getting a different look. Kind of cool. You might find that you might like this way of painting better. It'll give you a little bit of a little bit more interest, maybe. Already. Now I'm going to mix up that gray again. I don't want my paper to dry out too fast. And I am painting with the side of my brush. Again, this doesn't have to look exactly like the other guy. Go back and I can soften a few of these edges if I want. But I think it has a nice little bounce for lacy clouds especially. So one, I wet the paper completely. And this one I half wet the paper because I sprayed it. Kind of fun. Again, I'm not putzing. Done. I can lift. Yes, I can lift. But let's see what happens. Oh, look at that. Two different ways. Which way do you like the best? I don't know. What mood am I in today? What kind of weather is it? What kind of painting am I doing? Do I want the sky to be more dominant? Do I want it to be more interesting or less interesting? Still pretty wet. I don't recommend taking the tape off while it's wet. But this is a workshop, so who cares? There we go. And I can fix this pretty easily. So I'm gonna take my pad, I'm gonna take this Mr. Gravity, I'm gonna mix up some of that blue color, and I'm gonna let my Mr. Gravity take it right down that edge. There we go. Replace that. Straighten up the edge. So anyway, there you go. Similar but different, huh? This could apply to any painting, whether it's buildings. It could apply to still lifes. It could apply to seascapes, cityscapes, landscapes, animals, backgrounds, especially. So we have two different looks just from that basic little thing. This is a good one to practice. Okay, in 5 minutes, we're going to paint the waterfall. And we'll do that as one painting. Any questions? Any comments? Are you still there?
Yes,
Okay.
still here.
Joe, can I show you mine? It's Ruthie.
Absolutely. Who said that? Oh, okay. Hang on. Okay. Okay. Looks like the top one was not wet enough when you started. I see too many. Are you talking? Oh.
I'm having a problem with it drying too fast.
Yeah, well, that's just because of the day. You know, a lot of people who do workshops in different parts of the countries or the world, they're not used to the humidity. So judging from that, yes, I was having the same issue this morning. It was drying too quickly, especially when I was showing you that little push and pull on the edges with the purple paint. But just try it again, only use more water today. Today, I got to use more water. 6 months from now, I'm not going to, it's raining outside. It's going to take longer to dry. So as long as you recognize that, that's the big deal. So you're your own coach.
If I wet it once and wait, and then wet it again and wait and wet it again, would that help?
You could go over it. It's a practice anyway. So you can
Right.
go over it. You can wet it as much as you want or not. It just depends on the day. And it depends on, frankly, it depends on the kind of paper you're using. Whether it's a real soft paper or a harder paper. So it depends. That's the curse and that's the blessing of watercolor.
Right, right.
Oh, yay, I figured it out. And
Okay,
the
thank
next day,
you.
it's like golf, bogey, par, birdie, same guy, you know, same guy. So anyway, So let's start the, I want to make sure that we get this in. I want to start the waterfall, which is this guy. So this includes a lot of the edges, right? And we just saw another way to do edges. I frankly don't know. It depends on what I'm painting this sky for, however technique I use, whichever technique. So anyway, I'm gonna get rid of this guy. Thank you. And get ready for a waterfall. So we'll actually have to draw something this time, or at least I'm going to draw something this time. And I'm going to do this in 3 stages after I draw it. I am not going to, because of time, I am not going to do a value study of this. And besides that, I've already painted it once, so you can do a value study of this, spend 15 minutes if you want. Not today, but down the road. So I see that I have, let me see if I can find it. This is my reference. And I see the horizon line is kind of through the middle. I'm going to keep it on the lower side because I don't want it to go down the middle. And I see I have this flat right here, and that's about halfway. So there's my top of my waterfall, and then this is the diagonal going up. And then I've got another something coming in here, and I've got this, and I've actually got this going in front of it. I've got a little piece of greenery, something coming up here. And then I've got these trees coming down and forming the edge of this waterfall. And then I've got some streakies, and I've got another part of this waterfall over here, and some trees. And so, but that's pretty much pretty close. I see that this is in front of this, and it's going to go. This is in front of this guy, and actually this is in front of this background back here. And I see this is going off at an angle, and this is kind of sort of flat. I've got a few rocks here. And I've got this nice little sticky bush thing here, and a rock. And this nice little opening, and some, that's just to remind me that it's there. And then I've got this. And something over here, and a rock. And a rock. And a rock. That's plenty to start painting with. I'm not going to draw the water. Not going to do it. So I just want to make sure the star of my show is in the right spot. And I've got a little diagonal with some, looks like, I don't know what that is over there, but it's a little pattern. Anyway, I'll give you a couple minutes to draw that. So there's my horizon line. It's about right there. So I'm going to erase those other lines so I won't be confused because of my small brain when I start painting. A couple of rocks on the shore over here. There we go. And I'm definitely using a gravity machine because I want this to flow. In fact, I'm going to show you guys the start of what I did when I painted this. Oops, no, I don't want that guy. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. So here's how I started this. I'm getting rid of the white paper mostly, not all, but I'm doing an underpainting. And this is very similar to what we painted this morning, correct? And I'm just doing an underpainting, and it's an abstract painting. If I squint my eyes, I really can't tell what it is yet. It maybe looks like water, looks like something, I'm not quite sure. And this was the second stage after I put in the midtone. After that first stage was dry. So the first stage was wet and wet. This is wet on dry. And then this is adding darks and detail for finish. So you can kind of see somewhat the difference. So I just want to make sure that you guys get this process. So I'll bring back star of our show. Yay. It kind of sort of looks like what I'm after. Kind of sort of. Okay, so I'll give you 5 minutes to finish drawing that, and then we're going to be doing this in the process. We'll have to use a hair dryer or something for the wet and wet. You know, while you're drawing, you can listen to this. There's actually a way to do this in between these two. And that is to, instead of sprinkling, half wetting the paper, I could half wet it with a brush in an abstract kind of pattern. And then I could sprinkle it. And then I've got wet, I've got half wet, half dry, and I've got dry. That's a really rewarding but risky proposition to paint that way, but it's kind of fun. So I'm going to wet this whole page. And I'm going to try to keep in mind that it's drying faster today. And this is just going to be, I'm going to treat this as my underpainting. So I see that I have some, I'm going to use my big brush. I have some blue. There's my blue. And that's going to drift down and lighten up. And then I'm going to keep using that blue. I have some blue coming down through here. I have some blue up here. And that's really going to drip and run. That's kind of cool. I have some blue up here. I'm going to start mixing some warm in. I'm just using a little bit of raw sienna because this is going to be green down here. I'm not going to make green. I'm going to try to mix green. I can be quite colorful with this guy. I'm going to use some red. Some alizarin mixed in with that. You know me, I like color. I'm going to make that even more colorful. Wow. What was I thinking? I'm going
I
to leave
always heard
some.
I always heard you were a colorful guy.
I'm going to let this drip and run. I love it when all this stuff just happens. Here's going to be my, I'm actually just kind of sort of wetting this like we did in that very first one we did. So here's my wet. I'm going to leave a couple of light places. In fact, I think I'm going to mix up a little purple kind of color using both those. My cerulean and my alizarin together. I'm going to let that run. I kind of like that, but I'm going to put that someplace else. There we go. That's kind of fun. I'm going to put just a little bit of that color up in here, at top of that tree line. Let that drift. And so there's my fabulous underpainting. I'm going to take a little bit of that warm color that I have, and I'm going to put it right in here. Yep. That'll pick that back up. So there's my fabulous underpainting, and this is going to be trees up here, but it's going to dry way back, and it's going to give those trees a depth. And I kind of like the way this is just flowing and going. Looking at this as kind of an abstract painting. And now I have to wait for that to dry a little bit. I'm going to go back and add some of this when I think it's time. I'm going to add some of this very first thing that we did. That water, I'm going to try to time it so I get some of those soft shapes. Painting is fun. I'm turning the air on. You know, this is almost kind of sort of like I'm sculpting. I see the paper starting to dry down here a little bit. So I'm just taking my cerulean and a little bit of burnt sienna. Make a little more neutral blue. And I'm just going to try this. I'm going to try that there. Try that there. I'm going to back off on this a little bit so I dampen my brush and wipe some paint off because I want some of these shapes to stay. So I'm getting that soft look. You'll notice that I'm just making one stroke at a time. One stroke. I just want to try to get that watery underpainting. Start to look like water. I'm going to do kind of the same thing with this waterfall. I can always go back and I can soften edges later. I can soften edges right now. It's starting to look a little more like a waterfall. Add a few little darks in here. A lot of those are going to dry right back. So in effect, because of the edges that we want, this is starting. I'm painting almost alla prima from start to finish. I'm going to keep painting. Put this in here now just to remind me that it's a rock. And I think this is starting to dry out up here, so I can actually keep painting. So I'm going to use that cerulean and I'm going to deaden it a little bit with burnt sienna. And I'm going to start defining some of this. Whatever I do on that side, I want to make sure that I try to do kind of the same thing on the other side. Hey, the waterfall's starting to take shape. I have green on my palette because that's the way it came, but I'm not going to use it. I'll try to make my own. And try to let some of that nice warm color from the background show through. Just painting your typical light to dark. A little left for an edge. Whoops, throwing my brush. Okay, let's see if what we can do with this water a little bit. I'm gonna get out my dagger brush and try to mix up something that's closer in value, but a little life, little interest. Thing that I like about using the dagger brush is it gives me different strokes, different looks on the stroke. Not quite sure what I'm going to get, but I know it's going to be not just I can tell that that was done with a number whatever flat brush or round. I'll make them a little more green. Put in a few little places. I kind of like the way those edges disappear, melt into each other. I'm going to mix up kind of a neutral dark so I can start. I want to make sure I put in this rock. Now I'm putting in my darks. Starting to. I think this can still use a little more emphasis. Soften some edges. Little lift. Just squeezing the water out with my fingers. I'm gonna take just a little of my white paint, my gouache. Tidy up a couple of things. Makes a difference. Then I have to take a look at it. So I like the way letting that underpainting go through worked. That was kind of cool. Picking up this little warm color makes it a little bit more interesting than that. Okay, you've exhausted me. Comments, questions? You still awake?
I'm awake.
You're still awake? Good.
Yeah, I'm awake.
Still awake with the mute button on.
Your painting is beautiful, Joe.
It is.
It's an indication. I mean, that's the way I like to think of it. It's indication. Because as you can see that I'm putting down strokes. I'm not petting, I'm just indicating. Oh, yes. Because you can see it's just a build of shapes.
I really feel the movement of the water
Good.
in your painting very much. I
Good.
really feel like it's coming towards me.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, if we would have, you know, if you were doing a full sheet of this, yes, you'd spend more time and you'd do stuff, but I'm just trying to sit on a rock over there and capture the moment.
Yeah, I feel that. Feel like I want to go in.
Has anybody ever been to Havasupai?
No, been
It's
to
in
water.
Arizona. Yeah, it's in
waterfalls.
Arizona.
Yeah.
It has natural hot tubs. Or it used to.
Nice. I've been to the 7 pools in Hawaii.
Oh, I haven't been there.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
By the way, here's my white pencil, so I'm looking at a couple of little things. So yes, I see that I could do that. This isn't dry yet, so I'm probably not, yeah, it's not gonna do very much, but anyway, I can go back with this and I can put in a few little details, things, soften, harden, whatever. Anyway, what I tried to paint is depth. So you can see there's more contrast up here with the shapes, the edges, and the values. And it gets a little less as it goes back in the distance. Anyway, this is, to me, this is what makes watercolor fun.
Fun and frustrating.
Oh, I call it funstrating. I invented a new
Fun,
word.
frustrating.
It's
Yeah, fun,
funstrating.
frustrating. I have to go along with you. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, that's all it is painting. It's
Yeah.
it's really all it is just painting.
Well, I'm going to have to check out Joe. This is Belinda. So thank you very much. It was a really enjoyable lesson.
You're welcome. Anybody, please post your stuff on Cluster. And I'll go back to stop the share for a second. Anybody want to hold anything up? Okay, hang on. Let me spotlight. Let me add this first. Whoops. Let me remove. There you go. Oh, cool. Look at that.
It was fun.
Yeah, it looks like you had fun.
Good.
It was kind of one of those things where, boy, is there a variety of edges in that, right? Lost, found, hard, soft, broken. There's everything in that painting.
Mm.
So I'm glad it worked out.
Well, thank you. It was great.
I'm glad I made a right choice. Okay, Mallory, let's see you. Oh, wow.
Nice.
Well, that's really roaring. And that's your style.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Mallory. I can tell that's a Mallory. That's really important that you add your own style to that. Very cool.
I'm sorry I missed your shape class.
Well, I'm starting to do a possibility of putting up editing the recordings, which take time, and then just putting those up for a nominal price.
Mm-hmm.
So the shapes are very important,
Yes.
but that's okay.
Mhm.
Send me an email. Okay, let me remove that. And let's see, Jenny, did you have one? Oh, look at that. Cool. Yep. So you guys had fun with this. We covered a
Joe-
lot of stuff.
Joe, can I show you mine? Oh, sorry.
Yes. Hang on. Oh, who said that? Hang on a second. Let me go back to gallery. Who said that? Ruthie? Is that you?
No.
I didn't say it, but I wanted to show it to you.
Okay, sure. You're up. Oh, cool. Yeah, I think you guys learned a lot from this one. On your trees, use the side of the brush instead of the tip of the brush. Use the side and just brush the paper. Hold it horizontal to the paper. And you'll just hit the bumps on the cold press. So
Thank you.
that'll make a difference. So who else had, who else
Peggy?
was there? Peggy, okay, Peggy, I can't see you, Peggy.
No?
It just is your name,
Oh, let me see.
but you did a great job on your name.
There you
There you-
go.
There you go. Yes, I can see you now. Let me pin you. There you go. You gotta
If I-
hold it back. We gotta hold it back a little bit and up,
Yes, if you can start like this,
and
you can
up.
do
just raise it up. There you go. There you
it. Start
go.
like me so I can see where it is on
Pretty
the paper.
close. Cool. You got some nice edges. You got some nice lost edges in there, didn't you? And you got some nice treetops. Cool. So post your stuff on Cluster if you want. You know, you guys know how that works. And Sandy is in outer space now.
I am. It's a little
And
too
s-
wet to hold up. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, Drips. Yes, that's you. And Steve is taking a nap. Steve is planning his move.
I just have nothing to, I have nothing worth showing.
Does anybody, Carol, did you want to? Sure. Oh, wow. Cool. So you know what would be interesting with this is I could turn those, oh, very good, very good. I could turn those, the one we just did and the one you're holding up in your right hand, you could turn those into, just for practice, try one that's not sunset, but maybe it's winter. And the same with the other one, try the one waterfall one, maybe it's fall. You know, it's stuff like that. So, and it could have a sky, it could be sunset, could be backlit, could be anything. It's a really, really good practice to try to do that because that means you are truly master of the universe. So, and that's the point. You can be master of the universe. You can take your reference and do tons of different stuff with it. Oh, Mallory, I like your fruits and veggies in the background.
That's in process.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments?
When are you going to put the Zoom up again? Are you just going to just put the, you're just going to upload the Zoom?
As soon as it's processed, I'm going to stop the recording right now. Stop recording.